Hello, everyone. This is Dave from Moonride, and I want to welcome my lovely interviewee. This is Etta Jackson, and she is a best-selling author and also, amazingly, the founder of the Institute for Conscious Global Change. And I'll just show you one of her many books, right? And this is the Unveiling the Secrets of the Feminine Principle, right? I'll just say as a note that Etta and I met because I did my YouTube video on the Divine Feminine, and she contacted me, and we have just been really chatting ever since, right? Because
Yes.
I'll tell you, this lady is a fascinating woman. Do not miss this interview. And let's just start. Maybe you could summarize your work a little bit better than mine first. Just maybe say a couple of things about you.
Oh, wow. Interestingly, the first thing that came to mind was that I've always seen myself as an instrument of the light
Mm-hmm.
all
Mm-hmm.
my life.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
never thought about that until you just asked me, Dave.
Oh, okay. I think I was inspired to ask you that.
Yes.
That's
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and that's true. That's how I've always seen myself. Because
fabulous.
from a child, I have always been guided by this light.
Mm,
And I
hmm.
remember telling my mom when I was very young that I came here. Imagine a child telling your mother this. I came here to help with the liberation of humanity.
Now, how old were you when you said this?
You're very young. You can imagine she's looking at me. Where do
I
you
was just
get these things from?
wonderful. So, can you tell us about the amazing process by which you wrote? I think it's your first book, Understanding Your Choice.
Yes, yes. Um, so I was living here in New York, and I was living in Brooklyn, and I was standing at the light, stoplight, the traffic light. And this light that has been so familiar to me all my life, which is a golden white light, um, overshadowed me and said to me, write this title down. It's the title of a book that you will write. And I kind of looked up at the light and said, what? But I did as I was directed, and I got out my little notepad and I wrote down Understanding Your Choice, because that was the title that was given to me.
Mhm.
And and I kept arguing with the light. Are you sure it's me? Because I know I wasn't a writer, and I thought also the title was so vague, Understanding Your Choice. And I said to the light, what could I possibly write about understanding your choice? But, I just closed my little book, put it in my pocketbook, and went on my life and just thought, they had the wrong person, because this was definitely not for me. And so I kind of dismissed it because I just thought it was just so way out, to think that I was going to write this book on understanding your choice and had no idea what it was about.
Mhm.
But as I said in my video, every 5 to 10 years, the title would pop up in my mind again. And I would still be arguing with the light. You have the wrong person. It's not me. And I was waiting for this to go away, which of course it never did. And I came back to New York, and after about a week and a half, the same light said to me, it is now time to write the book. And I had
Mhm.
stopped, and by then I'd stopped arguing because I came to the realization that I had to write this book.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think the 25, and that not think, I know that the 25-year journey really informed me as to what the light was talking about. So by then, 25 years later, I was now settled into the idea of writing the book.
Mhm.
And that's how I began. And you'd never believe this, but I was staying in a friend's apartment because I had gone on a 10-year walkabout and back in New York. And I was staying in a friend's apartment initially, and on her bookshelf was a book titled How to Write a Book. So I mean, that was a perfect setup for this. And
Mhm,
so I thought, okay, I'm done arguing. I understand. I accept my assignment. And that's when I started writing the book.
mhm,
And I wrote the first 2 chapters in New York in that apartment. And then I was directed to go to London. And I was told that there are all those esoteric libraries in London and I needed to access them. And I was
mhm,
also told that the book should be written in a more academic format.
mhm.
So that's why they're written like that,
Wow.
with glossary and references, etc. Because that's how I was directed to write them. And I would
Mhm,
go to these libraries in London, and it's like the light would just direct me as to which book I should pick from the shelf. And I would just go and pick that one, that one, that one, that one. And I'd go
mhm.
back home and I would write and write and write. And during that time of writing the book, this intense golden light just enveloped me. And the light explained to me that people might not readily understand what I write in the books, but that there's a vibration from the work that will help them to understand on a more cellular level.
Hmm.
And so, in part, answer to your question earlier, yeah. So I was directed to write them just like I was guided. And so that's how the first book came about. Um, and toward the end of writing the first book, I was told I had 2 other books to write. And I wasn't going to argue anymore either. So, and the titles were given to me. Unveiling the Secrets of the Feminine Principle as a second book, and The Role of Consciousness in Governance as a third book. And then
Mhm.
when after writing the third book, chapter 8 of the third book, The Role of Consciousness in Governance, seemed so profound to me and important as as information that I think should be disseminated, that I sort of expanded on that chapter, put some images in it, and made it an ebook initially, and now it's in paperback. It's called The Idea That Is the United States of America. It's Occult Foundation. And I thought that that was so pertinent for people to have, that even if they didn't buy the third book, that chapter would be available to them
Yeah.
widely. So that's how it came to be.
Hmm. That's amazing. Now, can you describe the experience of the golden white light? What's it like? I mean, I know it's difficult to explain, but how would you explain it?
Well, I've always seen or known of God as the light. So for me, the golden white light is God. And it's not a personality. The light is an energy force that is encompassing. It's the totality of everything. And it's both feminine and masculine. And I in my I I separate out the golden and the white as the masculine and the feminine aspect of the golden white light.
Huh. Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
So that's what I know God to be, this pervasive, powerful force that I know as the light,
Hmm.
the golden
Now, would
white light.
would gold be masculine or feminine?
As gold as masculine, and the white light as being the feminine, but they're merged. They're not two separate. I don't see them as two separate. That's why I always refer to the light as the golden white light,
So it's both.
as the masculine and the feminine energy together as one, because they're one, and there's no separation in the oneness.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
I hope I don't contradict that in my next question, because I was going to ask about the unveiling the secrets of the feminine principle, that's one of your books, and
Hmm.
ask you to define the feminine principle. If we were to extract that out, would
Yes.
this be another way of saying the divine feminine?
Yes, well, I got this definition which I'm going to read. I like this. It says a principle is a source or origin, that from which anything proceeds, fundamental substance or energy, primordial substance, ultimate element or cause, an original faculty or endowment. And so I see the principle as the first cause. And that what we see in the manifest world is a separating out of the oneness for the purpose of understanding each part of it more clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So the masculine and the feminine are two aspects of the one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And on this planet, we're here to understand those more clearly. And that's why we have the pairs of opposites, whether it's male and female, black and white, rich and poor, all of the pairs of opposites, for us to understand more clearly what is the one. Because all of those things that we talk about as being opposite are all really aspects of the one thing.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Fascinating.
And so I
So,
see the feminine as more of the vehicle through which the principle manifests on the expressed world, in the expressed world.
uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Great. Now, light workers are heralding a shift more towards the divine feminine. How do you feel all of us can align with this shift or even help it to occur?
Well, I think becoming more conscious of the feminine, because part of what has happened, the feminine has always been here. She's the creative principle of the universe. She brought all things into manifestation. So she has never been anywhere. She has always been here, but sort of behind the scenes, veiled, operating, you know, sort of out of sight. And now what she's doing is stepping forward. She says, here I am. I've always been here. You have not paid so much attention to me and
Uh-huh.
given me my rightful place. That's
Uh-huh.
another thing that's really happening. The shift is that she is being seen and known as who she actually is, the creator of the universe. It is she, not he, who brought all things into manifestation. And we have not given her the credit. We have not known who she really is. In the Bible, in the Christian religion, they talk about the Holy Spirit that everyone is waiting for. It is she, the third person of the Godhead,
Mm.
the Divine Mother. And so because we're now in the age of Aquarius, which is the age of the feminine, she's now taking off her robe and she's saying, here I am. And now I want you to learn about me.
Mm.
And to that end, unveiling the secrets of the feminine principle is meant for the public to really have a better understanding of this divine feminine principle and the vehicle through which she expresses the divine feminine, and to better understand him or herself, and especially for women to really come into their own, to come to understand who they are, how powerful they are, that they aren't second to none, but equal to. And so this is why all of this is happening, because this is the time. This is the end of the Piscean age, and we're now on the path of return. And the next step is the divine feminine, the Aquarian age, in which the divine feminine is going to be featured very prominently. Because that's the only way that we can really have true peace on the planet, when both the masculine and feminine are in equal balance
Yes.
and are able to express at that level of power.
Mhm.
And so this is where we are. it's sort of the trajectory for where we would be at this time.
Wow, great. Now you mentioned 4 principles about how people could help this shift.
Well, the ancients always say that a question, um, 4 questions that we should ask ourselves is, who am I? Where did I come from? What am I doing here? And where am I going? So those are 4 fundamental questions that everyone who seek to know him or herself need to ask. That's what the ancient, the masters have always said. You're here to know who you are, because to know you is to know God. You are the sum total of God in a more, on a micro level, you would say, because in man are all the sun, the moon, are the moon, the sun, and the whole, on all the planets are inside of you. Your chakras are related to all of the planets. So you are much more than you imagine. And so to really understand yourself is to really understand God, because you're it. You're packaged with all the information. And so it's to almost like open the book to begin to read, because you are it. You all this information, and not just from this incarnation, but previous incarnations, you're carried forward from lifetime to lifetime in your, especially the root chakra, is information that you bring forward, you bring into this incarnation from previous lifetimes, and to begin to explore, again, open the book so that you can begin to understand yourself. You will get to know all things. This is why the wise know all things, because they know themselves.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Now, viewing your own awakening, what would you recommend for those who would want to know those things, who would like to pursue their own awakening?
Well, of course, my books of because and I say that jokingly, but I'm really serious, because that was what was given to me to do, to take this information, to bring this information to the attention of a large percentage of the public, to have a better understanding again of where did we come from, what are we doing here, what is this all about, where am I going? And I was able to bring all that information together in those 3 books for you to get a better understanding. Plus, there are some not only my books, but there's some fantastic books available that, and I reference them because, as I said, I was told that I should write the books in a more academic format. So there are references in my book for other books that you can read, so that you can get more of this information. But the ancient wisdom teachings is about information that has been here from the beginning of time. That, there's nothing new under the sun. And so my job was really to gather all of that information and make it very accessible to the public. And that's what I've done in my 3 books. So I would start with my books. And then again, all those references that I cite in my book would be wonderful places to start. Plus, there's some very good mystery schools that are available. And I also mentioned them in the back of my books, especially the first one. So that would be where to start. But Dave, another thing I want to say is that journey cannot begin without clear intent. One has to want to. The ancient says that the question that everyone must ask himself is, what do you want? And to answer that question, hopefully, is to know myself, because that's really what we came here to do, to know ourselves. And that will begin the journey, because as you know, when you ask for anything intentfully, your soul responds. and will lead you either to talk to this person, to read a book, but when you're clear within yourself about wanting to know and not just being curious, because as I said, my books are not just for the curious. It's for those people who are really serious about wanting to know who they are and are ready to embark on the path of return. And I talk about the path of return in interest. I'm going to backtrack a little. When I was given the first book to write, Understanding Your Choice, I was told by the light that I should couch it in the story of the prodigal son. And if you know the story of the prodigal son left home. And again, the prodigal son wasn't thrown out of the father's house. He made a decision to leave. He says, I cannot know who I am if I stay in this cloistered environment, the safe, protected environment. I need to leave the safe place and go out into the distant lands so that I can meet with my brothers and sisters. Because that's the only way I'm going to know who I am. I have to interact with people who are different from me, have different ideas from me. And so that's how, that was what I was instructed to do, to couch it in the story of the prodigal son, because like humanity who came here on this journey, we went into the far country. This is the far country that we're in. And so we're now on the path of return. And so what have you, like the prodigal son, it says when he came to himself, he began the journey back home. And that's where we are. We're on that return path back home. So we need to now reflect on what have I learned? And this is, and also this pandemic has really given us a wonderful opportunity to really reflect, because the ancients say you cannot be enlightened without periods of self-reflection and self-assessment. And so this period has really given us a wonderful opportunity to be in the house, to reflect on our lives and to rethink a lot of things that we thought were just so absolutely essential for our survival. We got to find out that that's not true. And so we're rethinking and also making different decisions so that on that path of return, we can be moving forward as different people with a different consciousness.
Great. Well said. Can you tell us about the Institute for Conscious Global Change? I'll just format this by saying that Etta does a lot more than write. And I mean, a lot more than I could summarize. But what is the Institute for Conscious Global Change?
Yes, that's interesting, Dave, because there's a direct connection between the Institute for Conscious Global Change and on the book, Unveiling the Secrets of the Feminine Principle. Because it was during the writing of Unveiling the Secrets that this powerful, beautiful, white, shimmering light appeared to me right here in my apartment and said to me, go to the computer, sit down and concretize the ideas you've been walking around with in your head for all these years. And I thought, wow, you know how, somebody says something, said, yeah, I did have these ideas, but, they were just in my head. And I did exactly as I was directed, as I always do. And I went to my computer and wrote up this idea for how development could be done differently. And one of the things she emphasized is that it had to be visual, that this development, and the development needed to involve both the government and the citizens of each country. And so I was to do this, and you have to know this, that I know nothing about geographic information systems technology. So I'm being given this assignment to do. And I don't know anything about GIS, which turned out to be the platform, the visual platform on which I am to do this development planning for communities that will help to eradicate poverty. So I was directed, after I wrote up this idea that she told me to, I was then told that I needed to go to the United Nations because it needed to be part of the United Nations work. So of course, this is all brand new to me. So I'm giving me, you can begin to see this pattern. I'm being told and given directions to do things that I know nothing about, have no previous background with. But because I think they know that I will carry out whatever I'm directed to do, I did just that. And the idea, I was told that the organization was to become accredited by the UN. And so in 2012, ICGC, the institute, became accredited by the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. So we work in the area of development with the United Nations. And I was also told that the idea needed to become an official document of the United Nations. That happened in a very interesting way. Somebody just walked up to me at the UN and said, I think you should get this idea, become an official document of the UN. And voila, in 2016, it became an official document. Then I was also told that I needed to get the pilot done so I could show what that looked like. Me telling you that this is how it's supposed to be, but actually doing it gave you a very concrete, again, that word concrete, idea of what that would look like on the ground. And I was directed, I'd always wanted to do a PhD, and it finally came about. I started a PhD at Antioch University, which has a very wonderful model of scholar practitioner model, where you merge your practice with your scholarship. So I was able to do my dissertation research to show how using geospatial information and certain participatory research methodologies, geodesign, show how you can work with the government and the citizens to get their idea of what they want. And this was what the Divine Mother was explaining. Instead of somebody coming in and telling you what to do with your community to change it, you talk with the people themselves and they tell you what they want. And that's what I was able to do in my dissertation work. And that's when you and I talked for the first time. I was wrapping up my dissertation work in Kenya when we talked from Nairobi. And so I now have a model for how the United Nations 2030 agenda, which is a new agenda, very transformative agenda for eradicating poverty, can be achieved using technology and with government leading the way and citizens participating and businesses and academia all working together in partnership. So that's my other life.
Terrific. Can you give us an example of one of your successes in sustainability?
Well, again, that work that I did in Kenya in an informal settlement called Maniada in the western city of Kisumu. I had the wonderful privilege of working with those people. And what was interesting, Dave, was when I got there, the first person I spoke to was the county minister of planning and the city planner. And they said, you could not have come here at a better time because we're involved in the comprehensive, integrated, holistic development plan for the city of Kisumu. And your work will be very important to be integrated into our overall plan that we will come up with. So when I was done doing the development planning for the informal settlement, they reached out to me and says, now we're ready for your work. And they have now incorporated it into the overall development plan for the city. One that is comprehensive. And I want to reiterate, because especially in developing countries get donor money and they do projects. And one of the things the Divine Mother emphasized that this is not going to be project oriented. This is going to be an integrated, comprehensive approach in which you look at water and health and education, transportation, agriculture, telecommunication as a whole. You look at it holistically and you plan it out. And that's one of the beauties of GIS, because it allows, it's a map, allows you to look at the scenario, and you, in conversation with the government and with the people, you come together and map out what it is that you want the future of your community to be. And that's what I got to do. So I now have a model. The United Nations has been sort of closed down because of COVID. So I'm looking forward to getting re-engaged with the UN so that we can get this replicated. Because that's the idea. They wanted me, the Light wanted me to go to the UN, not so much to do projects all over the world, but to do a pilot that would provide a model for how it should be done. So I am the how for the what of the 2030 agenda.
Right. Well, I mean, one thing I just find you to be so accomplished, Etta, but I also really admire your follow through and your optimism. And I would just like to ask, how are you optimistic about the future?
Well, I know why I am is because, as I said, when I came here, I knew there was a plan and that we're not here willy-nilly. And that's why I invite people to really understand where we came from, why we're here, what are we doing here, and what, because it provides that context for why all the things that are happening are happening. We came here on an experiment, so that needs to be understood. And so, like any experiment, you're kind of building the plane as you're flying it. And so, but to understand the context for why you came really helps you to not be as fearful, because it's like you understand that this is what the plan is. So when you see certain things happen, you say, okay, that has happened. Now I know that next is going to happen, and next, because you know where we're going. We are going to evolve from this planet a much more conscious being, humanity. And this is what this is all about. I think one of the important things to really keep in mind, and what the Light wanted me to communicate in my books, especially the first one, is this concept of light and dark, the pairs of opposites, that they're not two separate things. Because a lot of the struggle has been the fight between the pairs of opposites. I don't want this, I only want that. Well, there's no way to separate them. They're two parts of one whole. And I know we've been educated to believe that dark, what I call dark is veiled light. And so to take the veil off so you can see what lies behind that veil won't scare you so much. And this is what the ancient mysteries are about. This is why the unveiling of these mysteries is so important, because that will give you optimism. When you understand that there's a plan, I'm not here by chance, I chose to come here, and everything that is happening in perfect order, then you will, instead of being the victim, feeling the victim off, you will feel more in charge because you have knowledge. And so that's, to me, is where the optimism would come.
Fantastic. Wow, I could talk to you all day, and I really could. It was fantastic to interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dave. Really a pleasure.
And everybody, thanks for watching.